So we are here with Kara, Josh, and Tom. I'm Hytham, as you know. I'll kind of just like set the scene a little bit. Really excited to have Morgan Ingram with us here today. As you guys know, we've been doing these sessions over the past couple of months with leaders from sales and marketing, and we're bringing candidates on, and we're taking best practices that work in sales and marketing, and we're looking at how those might be applied to your job search. It's been working really well. People are getting interviews out of it. People are getting jobs. People are getting shout outs on LinkedIn, like, nice, dope video that you sent me. So Morgan is one of the best when it comes to personalization and video and prospecting. We'll let him kind of lead the session. I kind of chose this kind of group of people because all of you kind of bring something unique to the table. So Morgan, just to give you a little bit of context, Kara's in marketing. I sent your LinkedIn beforehand, but she's doing a little bit of what like a salesperson would do in a job search process, but I would imagine she's probably not going like as deep as a seller would go. So I'm thinking maybe we start with Kara, kind of talk about how to set that up. And then Tom and Josh are both on the sales side. So they're already doing a little bit of this. Something that Josh mentioned, which I think would be interesting to dive into, is the fact that he is doing it and he is performing a lot of this outreach, but something's not resonating. Either the messaging is not working, there's a lot of noise, a lot of competition. So I think it'll be interesting to kind of dive into that. And then Tom is located in Salt Lake City, doesn't have a huge network out there. I think that's something that others will also face, where you don't necessarily have, at least you don't think you have, that big network to tap into. So maybe we can dive into that and see how it goes. Sounds good?
Sounds good to me.
All right, sweet. So cool. So Kara, why don't you set the stage for us, kind of tell us a little bit about some of the challenges that you're facing and where you're at.
Sure, absolutely. So like Hytham said, I've worked in digital marketing now for the past 5 years, and I am typically based in New York City, where I've worked for those past 5 years, both at a large international firm, Conan Wolf, and then more recently, unfortunately, the COVID layoff effect, at Day One Agency. And Day One is much more of a small startup vibe, a creative agency of sorts, where I really was able to shift into more 360 marketing. And what I mean by that is kind of shifting away from the traditional PR lens and kind of adding in the digital layer and social media and influencers. So so I am based in New York, but quarantined out in Denver. So open to both markets. And I've had some interviews and some successes networking throughout the process, but I'm definitely looking for that next full-time role. So open to any tips you have.
Okay. First and foremost, have you written out what an ideal role looks like for you and the ideal organization?
I've written out the ideal position, but not at a specific company, because I do think that what's most important for me right now is to work for a brand or a company that is really helping local communities. And I found that when working on clients and brands in the past, I found it really hard to market them if I'm not passionate about their statement per se. So when I'm looking for that ideal next role, it's looking for a mission statement that I can really stand behind and rally behind.
Got it. So I would encourage you to write everything out that you just told me, because ultimately when you're looking at an opportunity, it's not and if it is one company, sure, but it's more so like, what kind of vibe am I looking for? And so the mindset that you want to have is, okay, like I'm coming in prepared. I know I have the right criteria for this role, and I'm more so coming in to pick this company, so that you come with a completely just different mindset to the interview. So you want to come in like, hey, look, if you get me, like, yo, this is fire for you, right? Versus, oh, like, I hope they give me a job. And that's just all a mindset thing. So like, this is first and foremost. And so you said that you've seen some success so far. So what success have you seen so far?
So I think it's twofold. One is making it to the interview round and then realizing that my resume did stand out, which always feels really good, since I think if you don't have a relationship or an in at a company, it is really, really competitive and hard to stand out these days.
Yep.
But then also on the other hand, just like getting to know people in my network and reconnecting with people that maybe I haven't spoken to since my first year out of college. So that's been really good, just to clue them in on what I'm looking for, maybe how they can help me, or I can help them, to have like a two-way relationship.
Okay. So you said you're getting in the door. So where is it falling off for you? Is it like you have the first interview and then like you don't hear back, or you're getting to like the last round and you're just not picked? Like, what happened?
Yeah, I've made it to a lot of first and second round interviews, and then I either don't hear back, or the company says they're actually pausing the process, which I've had a lot of. And I think that's hopefully more of a reflection of the times. But I always seek out advice from recruiters to know like what I could have done better, but I don't always hear back.
Okay. That's disappointing, by the way. You feel like you should get some type of feedback there. All right. So when the interview ends, do you always ask questions or you just leave it be?
No, I always ask questions.
You always
Many.
ask questions. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. All right. So do you reach out to people in the organization on the role that you're looking to get and how they have done in that role so far? And like, what's some advice that you have that they have for you?
Yeah, so I sometimes reach out to someone at a company if I don't have an in or a relationship to help my resume stand out. So that's
Yep.
kind of like before the interview process. But then after the interview, I always try to follow up with who I spoke to, just to close the loop and thank them for their time.
Okay, cool. So it sounds like you're doing a lot of great stuff so far. I think, and then what are the last question here? Then I'll give you some advice. So like, what roles are you normally looking for? So it sounds like it's marketing, but is there like certain roles?
Yeah, there's a big range, honestly, because I
Yeah.
do come from a traditional PR background. So I'm looking at everything from the PR manager to a digital strategist, director of communications, and marketing manager. There's really quite a few titles that I've noticed
Yeah.
that just depending on what the company is, they have different jargon. But I'm not tied to a specific title because I know that it ranges and it's more about the company and the culture than what my title is, to me, at least.
Yeah. I'm the same way. You know, it's just like, hey, cool. Whatever the title is, it doesn't matter as long as like I'm doing these things in terms of like action steps, right? So what I would encourage you to do since you're already doing it is in terms of like the follow up, like you're already following up. Do you use video at all as of today, or is it, or you just normally when you follow up, it's just written?
I usually follow up via email.
Email. Okay. So this would be my recommendation. And I've had a lot of people who have been doing this when they're going through the interview process and they just switched a couple things and allowed for them to get feedback when they didn't get the job that allowed them to get further jobs or just allowed them to break through this noise right now. So when you think about the interview process, most people don't follow up and you're already doing that. And most people don't ask people in the organization for advice. You're already doing that as well, which both are great. So what I would say is after each interview is done, I'd send a follow-up via video. And what I also would ask at the end of the first or second interview, normally there's another person that's involved in the next interview, right? So I'd be like, hey, great conversation with you today. Then you can ask the person, hey, who's going to be the next person that we'll be talking to? And then now as part of that follow-up, you can thank the person who you had the interview with. And then also the person you're going to talk to, you also will be sending them a video. So it's a very personal touch. So now that person's way more excited to connect with you in the next interview. And they're going to be like, oh yeah, we definitely have to talk to Kara in the next interview because you sent that video. So it's guiding them in the process, sending videos and being very diligent in your follow-up as well. And that will allow you to move to the next step based on what you've already told me so far. And you're already asking questions at the end, you're asking for advice, all those things. Like I would continuously do that. I would just say adding video between each follow-up will allow people to lean more into you because that's going to stand out versus everyone else. Because the people that are probably applying for those roles are not treating it as a sales cycle. And every single time that I think about an interview, it's a sales cycle. So if you treat it and think about it that way, it'll allow you to then close for that interview and asking those certain questions at the end of the first and second interview that get them closer to hiring you, that make them feel emotionally tied to you. So I would say video, adding it between those follow-ups is a piece of advice that I would give you just based on what you're telling me right now.
That's a great tip. Thank you. Yeah, I'm sure it makes it a lot more personalized and maybe that'll help my like face stand out and such.
No, I mean, you mentioned video in your intro, Kara, and obviously we had everyone submits a video as they're coming in to hire me, right? Do we want to dive into some of what the content of that message could be, Morgan, through the video?
Yeah. So Kara, at the end of your first interview, I know this can be a depends question, but what are the normal questions that you ask at the end of the first interview?
Yeah, it really depends. I try not to stay with the like typical, what's the culture? Although those are important questions, I try to really talk about their role or what the connection would be between my ideal position or the candidate's position and the connection to the person that's interviewing me. Or something about like where they see the company going or how their response to COVID or Black Lives Matter has been, to see if they're like proud of it and can stand behind it.
Okay. So I would ask some other questions as well to see like where they're at. So after the first interview, I always ask this and no one's ever prepared for it, but the response is going to predicate like how well this is going to go for moving forward. I just say, hey, and obviously you want to make sure there was a great conversation. I'm like, hey, this was a great conversation that we've had so far. Really have enjoyed it. Quick question. Do you have any concerns or hesitations on hiring me? Like
Yeah.
I asked right after that. And the thing is, I just to see do they hesitate? Because if they hesitate, then they have to try to come up with something. But if they answer pretty quickly, like, no, we're good. That means, again, I'm in good standing, right? Because I want to make sure that, like, we're both good on both of our ends, right? So, I flip the tables on them. I'm seeing it as, like, hey, I know what my value is, and I just want to see where you guys are at, right?
Yeah,
and then also, this is another good one as well, because you want them to basically sell themselves on why they should take you. So another question I would ask is, hey, we've had a great conversation here so far. And quick question, where would you see me fitting in this team? And what do you feel like I can bring to this team that's unique than everybody else? So that gives them to be like, oh yeah, like here's a couple things that make you unique. Here's a couple things that I've seen that you've done this interview. So like now, like they are basically selling themselves on why they should bring you in without you having to really say anything. Those questions I found to be in an interview when I was doing them, I found them to be beneficial. And obviously this was obviously before everything else, but I was able to move fast in the process because I asked these questions. Because then I got a gauge of like, okay, you really paid attention here on how I was unique. But if you couldn't answer that question well, that means that you weren't as interested in me as a candidate, which again is fine. But again, I don't have to feel weird when I don't get the follow-up or I don't get the second meeting. I knew that. However, if they're able to go into detail and explain these things to me, oh, that's fantastic. So those are the ways that I do that. And I like how you included like the current events too, because I think that's important, and it's asking people like, yeah, what do you think about the Black Lives Movement? But it's also like, what proactive steps have you taken to hire people of color? Like, can you walk me through that process? Most organizations can't do that. They say they like Black Lives Matter, but they don't have a process of what they're going to do, right? There's no action plan.
Follow through.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm hoping that those questions there are helpful, and then I'll answer the video, but let me make sure that what I was saying there made sense.
Definitely. No, those are great follow-up questions. I appreciate it.
Okay, so from there, once you have gotten those questions answered, that will then predicate what your video is going to be. So let's say that, you interviewed me and you told me, hey, these are a couple things you thought were unique, like no concerns or whatever. Then I'd follow up the video and be like, hey, Kara, thanks so much for interviewing me today. Really enjoyed the conversation. Could tell you guys have a really great vibe and culture over there. And here are the 3 things that like I got out of the interview and what I really liked about your organization, X, Y, Z. And then I'd be like, hey, looking forward to the next interview. What do I need to prepare to make this interview frictionless for you and to make this decision easier for you? So I'm already asking these questions to prepare myself for the second interview. No one ever asked this stuff. Like, what do I need to do to prepare for the next one?
By the way. This is I wish there was like pyrotechnics or something going on in the background. Like, this is fire.
But no one asked, like, what do I need to prepare to make this frictionless and an easy decision for you? Because as a hiring manager, I interviewed over hundreds of SDRs. Some of those interviews were like, I had a toothache. I was like, yo, this person was not prepped. Like, what is this person talking about? And the thing is, like, every time I went into an interview, we always treated it as like friction. That first one, because I don't know what you're going to come prepared with. And also I could be doing a million other things. So if you ask me, hey, Morgan, like, how can you make this frictionless? Or like, hey, Kara, how can I make this frictionless? You're going to be like, oh yeah, come prepared with these things because you want to make sure that interview is easy for you. Like, there's not a lot of people who like enjoy going into interviews and hiring people. Mm-hmm. They're like, oh, I gotta hop on with this interview candidate. Like, here I go again. So like, by breaking it down that way, what you're doing is you're saying, hey, I remember what we talked about in the conversation, right? With the 3 recap. I'm also asking, how can I make this easy for you? And that way it will set you up for the next interview. So I know all organizations have like 3, 4, 5 different type of interviews, but I would do that every single time to make it easier for them. Because they're going to be like, wow, Kara made this really easy for us to hire. Yeah. And if you do that, you will see more engagement in your interview cycles.
And can I ask a quick technical question?
Yes.
So when you're capturing this video, are you just attaching it to your thank you email with a quick line that says like, see attached? How do you?
Oh, yeah. So, yep. So you can find any video software like a Vidyard or a Drift Video. You also can connect with them directly on LinkedIn and send them a LinkedIn video too. So there's all these different options you can do, which I would encourage you to connect with the person on LinkedIn right after the first interview. And all you would say, let's say if I was talking to you again, Kara, and we just interviewed, I'd be like, hi, Kara, thanks so much for the time today. Below is a quick video of my feedback from the interview and what my thoughts were. That's pretty much it. And you can change that language of what I said. You could make it more comfortable for you. You can add like 2-3 sentences. I wouldn't make it long, but that's the way I would do it. Hi, Kara, thanks so much for the interview today and taking the time. I made you a quick video to explain what I got out of this interview, and I'm looking forward to the next step here. It's less than 90 seconds or something like that. No, that's all I would do.
Yeah, that's helpful. And I think it's important to keep it brief so that you can expand on like the meat of it in the actual video.
Exactly. Like think about it when you're going to decide on a movie or a Netflix show. Like they don't give you like a whole like story, like here's 8 pages on why you should watch it. It's normally like 5 to 6 sentences. So in an email condense that even more to like 2 to 3 sentences to explain why they should watch it.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. I love that. The other thing that like wasn't mentioned, but I think is really important too, what this does, on the other hand, I know Morgan knows this, is it allows you to speak in the language that they're speaking. So you can use the same words they use when they described you, when they pictured you. You can like get a sense of what's important to them by asking a targeted question like that, and then give it to them basically on a silver platter, hopefully.
Awesome.
Yep.
I love that. Amazing. Cool. So any other questions, Kara, before we jump into Josh?
Not at the moment, but I'm sure I'll come up with more once I digest for a second.
Nah, you're good. You're good.
Yeah, and you guys will get this video after, obviously, and Morgan posts a lot of really great content about this. So Josh, you mentioned in your intro video that you're doing some of this already, right? You're doing some kind of like prospecting for your job search. Would love to hear how that's going. Where are some of the places where you think, you know, you're getting hung up? And, you know, who knows, maybe Morgan will challenge you to pull up one of those messages and edit them live with us here today. I don't know, but just throwing that out there. But where are you at so far?
Sure. So, correct. Morgan, hello. Would also just like to make a quick comment on the last portion with Kara. So I love the kind of what I call a closing question at the end of the interview. That's actually something that I do already, although I do find it interesting that more times than not, I get the answer of, no, I don't have any hangups, but yet it still doesn't progress. So as far, going back to with my thing, so I'm using LinkedIn a lot, and I'm actually really grateful for the invite to this, as well as there's another platform that I joined like 2 days ago that will hopefully give me a little bit of a break from LinkedIn and, you know, all the positives that come along with it, but unfortunately there's some just drag down that comes with it too. So I've been doing a lot of networking with either going back to old contacts, previous coworkers, previous bosses, and then certainly new networking as well. And then I'm tying that in, especially with the new networking, a lot to jobs that I'm applying for. And if I have a connection to the company that is hiring, then I'll reach out to somebody I know and ask for an intro. I would say probably more than half the time I don't. So then I am reaching out to kind of doing a little bit of research to determine maybe who might be the head of that particular department, who might be the key people in, you know, HR, talent acquisition, that side of things too, and picking a couple from each side, sending connection requests, and then a message along with it. The message on LinkedIn, at least the message that you send, it caps out at 300 characters, but it actually is a few less than that by the time you put spaces and if you sign a name or anything on there. So let's call it 280 or so characters. And then I'm taking that and just putting in a reference back to the job that's posted, my candidacy, and then usually about 2 lines as to what I think would draw them in to, at a minimum, look at my profile to see more, to confirm that I am who I say I am, I'm the good fit that I say that I am, and that my experience makes sense to them. From that, I get a lot of people that accept the connection request and then ignore the message. And then you kind of play that game of the fine line of, you know, badgering or just, you know, kind of walking that line, I guess. So that's a place that I've gotten stuck quite a bit, especially when we're looking at, the somewhat blind application process. So that would be something that I know that's not something I'm supposed to be focusing a lot of my time on, or at least I've been told that by a couple of people. But sometimes you just see a job that is the right fit, or in your mind it's the right fit, or it's a company that you're interested in. I guess the other part of this puzzle that I should throw out there is that I come from the experiential marketing world, which is kind of at a standstill right now. There are a lot of people who are either like me, or if they're fortunate enough to still have their role, they're at a company that's on a hiring freeze, and that's indefinite right now. So I'm also experiencing a lot of me trying to pivot, but essentially being told that I'm great. They see the value in me, but as a company, they feel they have to go with the carbon copy of the job description, which means somebody who has the exact experience from a competitor, preferably working on a competing brand of the one that I'm interviewing for. And when my industry, for lack of a better term, doesn't exist right now, and it makes it really hard for me to be a carbon copy of something like that, that is a bit of a hold up too, that if I am fortunate enough to get the interviews, none of them have gone poorly, but none of them have progressed to what I would call the last round even, because ultimately there are, X amount of other people that have done the exact same job, whereas I've done an adjacent job.
Got it. And so from an industry perspective, I want to make sure that I understand that. So it's an instructional marketing role, and that's the one role that you go for, or are there something else that I'm missing there?
No, so experiential marketing. So like live events. Yeah.
Okay.
So no, I'm in an ideal world, I love doing that, and that would be the easiest path for me. It just doesn't exist right now. So right. I've been trying to pivot to, shopper marketing, digital marketing. I had an interview with a publishing company that was in their marketing department. Found out earlier today that likely is not going to progress for me. And that would be one of those times where I asked that, especially with that one, because it was a little more of a stretch. I asked that closing question of, is there any, based on the conversation we've had, is there any reason you feel that I could not only succeed, but exceed expectations in this role? And I got nope, I think everything translates pretty well, but then ultimately didn't have an opportunity to speak to anybody after that.
Right.
So I'm trying to expand out, but then the further I expand, I feel like the stronger the case I have to plead to even get a foot in the door, let alone have the actual conversation.
Is that the feedback that they're giving you? That, hey, you don't fit this profile, or you're not getting any feedback when you get to the final stages?
So at one place in particular, which is they're calling it creative commerce now, but they have been historically a shopper marketing agency. Mm-hmm. I had a little bit of an in. Actually, I had a couple different ins, but I had a little bit of an in with somebody in HR. And she took the extra step after my first interview, which went well. I thought it went well, was anticipating a second. The second never came, and I followed up with her. And she kind of, off the record conversation with me a little bit and just said, the person you spoke with really liked you. He actually went as far as to say he sees a spot in this company for you. With that said, he's new in his role, and he felt the safest play was to go with somebody that had done this exact same job at the same level, blah, blah, blah. Then the publishing thing was another one where it wasn't that explicit, but it was, we think the skill set translates. We thought you were great on the phone. The hiring managers wants to talk to these other people that are more industry, have more experience in the industry. So there are different levels of transparency with it, but that is a lot of what I'm getting. So I would love to figure out how to combat that, because the apples to apples is just not, I have to be very patient for that. And unfortunately with just, surroundings in life and other things, I don't have that luxury right now.
So it sounds like from what I'm hearing is you have to move more in that digital marketing role, which allows you to do virtual events. Even though we obviously can't do the live events, it allows you at least to go from the virtual standpoint. And it's a shift for you because the role is now completely different. So you have to find someone who's willing to bet on experience that you have and are doing a lot of virtual events. So it's looking at a company, or obviously companies that do a lot of events, in terms of webinars, live events, and there's a lot of them out there that do that, right? That could use your skill set based on what I'm thinking. Now, I don't know exactly how you'd be able to figure this out, but if you could find a company that's doing that many, like, I don't know, like 30 to 50 events, and so like webinars and ebooks and stuff like that, like that could be something you could latch onto, right, based on your skill set. Like, have you, I guess you've mentioned roles that you've reached out to. So let's go to the LinkedIn strategy here. Like, what does that look like? Like, I guess, could we see a live example of what the messaging looks like?
How do I do that?
Should be able on the bottom. You'll see like the green share screen.
Share screen.
If you,
I'm on my cell phone. Does that matter?
That probably won't work.
Might not work. Okay, so here's the thing. I was just gonna give you just some feedback here. So this is what I would do. All right. So one thing. Let me ask this question. This is like my default, but just because a lot of people see a lot of results with this is not where I'm gonna go. Have you used video before?
No.
All right. So this is what I do, and this is what I'm gonna tell you why. So, you know, I'm in tons of trainings, and I talk to a lot of sales leaders and a lot of reps. The thing is that when you connect with somebody and let's say you send your message the day of, or you wait a day, like what happens there?
I either send the message prior to applying or simultaneous.
Got it. Okay. So I don't want you to put anything in the note. I want you to keep it blank. I don't want you to put anything in there at all. And that has a higher connection rate. Now, the next step is waiting. Like in your case, you can wait one or 2 days, right? Because what ends up happening is when someone connects with you and they immediately, even if you're not like pitching anything, you're asking for something. But if you immediately put something there, it triggers people's subconscious because they're getting tired of the pitch and connect. So let's say, and the thing is, you're not doing that. I'm just telling you, like, that's how people think about it. So connect, boom, you add something, and then most people are like, oh yeah, I don't have time for this, right? But if you come with something different, that's going to allow you to do it. Now, I mentioned video. You can also do voice notes on LinkedIn as well. So you don't have to do video if you don't feel comfortable with it. It's fine, right? You can do either or, right? So I'm going to give you 2 options. It's completely up to you. So what you're going to do in this video and voice note is you're going to say, hey, let's say I was reaching out to Tom, right? Let's say Tom's working at a company that I want to work out, but he's not maybe the hiring manager, but maybe he's another marketer that's there, right? Maybe he's in content marketing. So I'll be like, hey, Tom, reaching out because I've been looking at your company for a while. There's an open role here about digital marketing, and be great for me to get involved with it. Do you know who's been getting interviewed for this role so far? I just want to get your feedback and just advice because I'm looking to apply it for myself. Can you help a fellow marketer out? Most people are going to reply to that and be like, oh yeah, like, sure, I'll help you out, Josh. Like, what's going on? And so you can either hop on a quick 15, 20-minute call, et cetera, or whatever that is.
Okay.
And so what you're doing there is you're going to be able to engage with people and network, just like you've been mentioning that you're doing. You're going to get advice and tips on how to reach out to this organization to get the interview. And what I would encourage you to do as well, be like, hey, Tom, this was a great conversation. Are there 1 or 2 people like you that I should meet in marketing? So you notice what I'm doing there is I'm getting more referrals to talk to people in marketing. So now I can just start building my network of marketers I'm talking to that could possibly get me a job. They may just like talking to me and be like, you know what, Josh, I'm actually the VP of marketing over here, and I want you to come on, right? And sometimes it's not just the interview process where we get jobs. It's, hey, I know you. I like what you're talking about here. Let's do it.
Sure.
Sometimes it's not even the resume. It's like, yeah, Josh, great conversation you had here. I got an open spot. Like, I feel like you can help. And so what you're doing there is you're finding companies you want to work for. You're getting Tom to give you advice, but Tom liked you because you reached out and asked for help. You had good questions. He'll refer you to some people you can go talk to, and you can build out this networking cadence while also getting advice on how to get these jobs as well. And so, like, in your arena, that's what I would be doing if I was in your shoes, by reaching out to people on LinkedIn, using the voice note or the video, stating how I was saying how to do it, and then also following up too, right? And so when you send someone like a voice note or a video, always ask for feedback. So if I send something to Tom and he didn't reply, but hey, Tom, any feedback on my voice note? Or hey, Tom, any feedback on my video, right? To get them to engage and respond to me. And I feel like if you're able to get that information from people internally on, hey, if you're qualified, not qualified, or how to approach it, I feel like those interviews will go a lot better if you have people on the marketing team coaching you on what to do. And for people that don't have as much experience, I found when they're able to get the job is they just ask for advice from people in that organization on, hey, this is what you should say, this is what you shouldn't say. So they can coach you in the right direction. So, based on what you told me so far, that would be my strategy and approach based on everything that I'm hearing.
Okay. As far as the audience then, since with the approach that I was doing,
Yep.
I was kind of going for more of people I thought might be some form of decision makers. With going this approach, should I do the same, or should I target that down a little bit because it would be better received, or they would be more inclined to spread the seed, if you will?
Yeah, exactly. So you're going to target people that would essentially be your colleagues, right? Probably like,
okay,
that you would be probably working with. You're not going to reach out to the hiring manager just yet. You're going to get that groundswell information to figure out like what's going on, right? You're going to figure out like, okay, have they hired anyone outside of the role? Maybe that person got hired and they didn't have experience for that role, right? But now they panned out to do really well. So you're going to get more responses. It's going to be frictionless for those people to respond to you, because a lot of people probably aren't reaching out to them in the first place. So you're going to get more advice. You're going to get more guidance. And then that will allow you to then reach out to the hiring manager, to the HR people, and get a better chance of landing the interview. So I would reach out to people that necessarily you probably wouldn't reach out to, but they're going to give you more info because they're going to have more time.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense.
Yep.
And then if either they don't explicitly offer, let's say if they don't explicitly offer to kind of push me down the path, would you then, assuming you had a positive conversation with this person or had some interaction, and would you then use their name like in your next step to say, I've been speaking with so-and-so, and, as you try to climb the ladder yourself?
Yeah. So on this, I don't call people out if they told me, hey, like, I don't want you to call me out. I just say, hey, I've been talking to a good amount of people on your team. I keep it very vague. Like, hey, I talked to some people on your team, and here's a couple things that they've mentioned. And so they're like, who it is? It's like, yeah, no, just a couple people, right? So you don't have to really display that because, like, hey, I just talked to a couple people there. That's normally what I recommend people to do. Is just say, hey, talk to a couple people. There's a couple of things that they gave me. Just want to make sure we're on the same page, etc. So that's the way to go about it, because some people may be like, hey, don't mention me, right? So it's like, all right, like,
Sure.
All right, cool. I won't mention you. So I'll be like, most of the people I talk to, or based on my research and stuff like that. Like, you can keep it very vague so you don't have to call anyone directly out, unless, again, they said, yeah, use my name.
Got it. Okay. Very good.
Yeah. Cool.
Thanks, Morgan.
Any other questions you have on that?
Not on that part. No.
Cool. Because I know you wanted to make sure that you could face that objection directly. So I want to make sure this advice is targeted towards that last piece that you really wanted.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that's definitely different from what I'm doing. And what I'm doing is, it's working in the sense of I'm getting a lot of what I would call circular networking. I don't know if that's a term, but if it is, we're going to coin it today.
Coin it. Wrong with it.
Where it's like, let's say you and I worked together in the past. So I reached out to you, and, especially if we worked together in the past, I'd just be very candid. It'd be a conversation. Yeah. And then you'd say, if there's anybody I can introduce you to, I'd come through your LinkedIn. I'd say, these 6 or 7 people seem great. Would you mind crafting some kind of an intro for me? First person then does that. And then I start talking with, connection number 1 that I'd requested, and I'll have a phone call with that person, and it'll go very well. And especially because a lot of these are experiential marketing type people. So that is, that's what I know. And so those conversations will go very well, but then ultimately will lead to, well, we're not hiring right now. I'd love to work with you in the future. We're not hiring right now.
Yep.
But if I can help in any other way, which ultimately is, cool, maybe you can introduce me to a few people. So then I'll get some connections out of that, and then I'll have the same conversation. It's like Groundhog Day, but the networking version.
Okay. So because you are asking, hey, like, who are some of the people that can help me? They refer you over in hiring. So I think there's a couple things here that you can use. I think there's 3. So one is, you've mentioned that you've gotten it toward the end of the interview, and then, like you said, that one HR example, right? I think I would start asking another question on that close-ended question, but like, hey, and just be upfront. Hey, I know that my experience might not be directly aligned with what you all normally interview. So my question to you is, how can I make this decision easier for you and make it feel more comfortable and safe for you as well? I think asking that question is something that I would start leaning on. If people are saying, hey, I don't feel as comfortable hiring you, and there's another safer option because their experience directly aligns, I want to go ahead and just figure that out now. And if there is something I can do, they're like, yeah, you know what, Josh, you're right. However, here's a couple things you can do between interview 1 and interview 2. Then I can provide the right resources for them to make it feel comfortable. Because here's the thing. Now, you are now at an advantage because the person who has the exact experience isn't thinking about this. They're like, oh, I got the experience, so I don't need to ask these questions. Now you're going to come more prepared than the other person. They're going to be like, well, okay, even though you don't have the experience we're looking for, you just were more prepared and you brought something that was completely off the table and it was really impressive. So now we want to work with you.
I like that.
Yeah. So, and then number 2, I would say, I would just tweak that, right? Hey, who are 1 or 2 people that are hiring right now that I can talk to, right?
Yeah,
not
sure.
Who can just help me. Like, that's cool, but like that are hiring right now. So you don't run into the scenario where like hiring's frozen. So you want to get them to qualify it out for you first before you get in there and now you have to figure all this stuff out.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think number 3, man, I would say I would try out that LinkedIn strategy and just do people like a little bit below the power line and then use that information up. So yeah, that's my recommendation to you, man. Hopefully that was helpful.
Cool. No, absolutely. I mean, it's different than what I'm doing, and I don't think that's a bad thing at all. So yeah, absolutely. It gives me something new to try and to play with and get a little more comfortable with video, especially when there's not another person on the other end. Like when it's not a conversation, it's more like, you in the mirror. Cool. I like
awesome.
it.
Love
Thanks,
it.
Morgan.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a whole other kind of session we could go into with like messaging and your LinkedIn and how you're positioning everything. If you want to like shoot over some Slacks afterwards, we can jam through that too, Josh.
Cool. Okay.
Sweet. So Tom, thank you for your patience, my man. So we're gonna like switch gears a little bit because it seems to me like, I mean, don't get me wrong, Tom, I'm sure you have a great network, but I think some of us don't necessarily have a bunch of different people that fit what we're looking for within like the target of where we're looking to work, whether it's location-wise, industry-wise, et cetera. So we have to go even a layer deeper, not only tapping intros, but doing something else. So would love to hear kind of where you're at, and then we can challenge Morgan a little bit on how we can go even further to stand out.
Yeah, appreciate you guys giving me the chance to discuss this. This has been a topic that's been on my mind basically nonstop for the last several months. My experience, I have 10 years of marketing experience in the automotive industry. And up until the end of last year was working for an automotive supplier, and we ended up closing down, unrelated to COVID, but we shut the business down. Me and my coworkers closed it down, exited the business, and unrelated to that, due to some family health issues, I relocated to Salt Lake City from Detroit. And so for the past 10 years, my network has really been built within the automotive industry and in the larger Midwest, in Chicago and Ohio and other places there. And so moving here, I have a very small network, and I'm likely to change industries just because there's not much automotive being done here in Utah. And so the challenge for me is really ramping up my network quickly, making those kind of connections that I need to. And I've had some success. I've done some of similar things. It sounds like what Josh is doing through LinkedIn networking, excuse me. But COVID hit kind of right around the time I was ramping a lot of that up. And then there's been a lot of great in-person networking events here that take place, and was attending those until COVID hit. And so it's forced me to move online. And so the challenge for me is been ramping that up and really differentiating myself when the only means I have of doing so is really in this digital space.
What roles are you looking to interview for on this one?
So similar to Kara, it's the title is not super important: marketing manager, marketing director,
okay,
that type of thing. But really, kind of marketing strategy, those kind of roles.
Okay, so when you're going about the interview process, I guess, where are things the hang up for you? Like, just to get an understanding there, we've had obviously multiple people. Is it like, hey, I'm not even getting the first interview? Is it like I'm getting to the end? Like, what's going on?
Seems to me the biggest hang up has been industry experience. So
okay,
as I mentioned, I've been neck deep in automotive for 10 years. There's really nothing here. And a lot of it is we're really looking for somebody who's got SaaS. SaaS is a huge market here, and so we're looking for someone who's got 5 years of SaaS or those kind of things. And I know there's ways to A lot of those skills are transferable, and I try and make those kind of arguments in interviews. But that's really been one of the biggest holdups is when it gets to the end of the interview, and I've actually asked that question. A lot of times it comes back, no, you look fine, but periodically it'll come back and they'll say, well, we really need somebody who's got 5 years in SaaS, or somebody who's got 5 years in healthcare or something like that. Of course, I'm not going to be able to get 5 years of healthcare experience. So
Yeah.
there needs to be a good way for me to be able to say, look, I've got these skills. And that's part of the interview, is me trying to make the case that, yes, I don't have direct experience, but here's why I feel my skills are transferable. And maybe I'm just not doing a good enough job of that in the interview.
At least I didn't ask if you had 20 years of Facebook experience, and Facebook was invented in 2004.
Yeah, and the SaaS experience, that's always the interesting one to me. I get it, but at the same time, it's like, it is what it is. So my question to you, Tom, is you've been doing LinkedIn networking. How has that been going for you so far?
Good and bad. I've had some successes. Occasionally it'll lead to interviews. I mean, it hasn't been total home run, but it's been okay.
Okay. You said bad. What's been going on there?
I don't know if not necessarily bad. Maybe not the right word, but it typically will revolve around a role that either I've heard of or seen online or something like that, and trying to make connections within an organization kind of surrounding that role. Sometimes I'll be able to, get information that's useful and helping me to sort of craft my messaging as I'm trying to get an interview, or, occasionally someone will be willing to forward my resume on, which has been helpful. I would just say it's not a high percentage as I would like. So it's kind of a numbers game, I guess. If I'm, looking at 10 roles, maybe 3 of them, I'll be able to make a good contact within an organization. And then the other 7, either I don't get responses or it's just kind of a lukewarm reception.
Okay. A lot of stuff that I would tell you in terms of LinkedIn, I would follow the playbook that I gave Josh. However, you mentioned something interesting. You could do this as a post.
Mm-hmm.
You could do this as a question just to people that you've talked to. And I don't know how you would research this, but I'll tell you what I'm thinking. So one thing that you mentioned here is that you're saying, hey, look, a lot of people aren't giving me a chance to get hired because I don't have industry experience. However, there's a lot of people who have had no industry experience and still able to got the job or whatever that is. So this would be interesting. I don't know. This could be a question for LinkedIn posts. However, again, you could ask people this and be like, hey, right now I'm in the interviewing process. I've been doing a lot of networking. Curious to hear LinkedIn's thoughts. Who knows a marketer that's had no SaaS experience and has moved into SaaS marketing? That question alone, when you ask a question to LinkedIn, people want to help. Generally, that's human psychology. People want to help. So if you ask that type of question, there could be a lot of people who interact with that and tag people that they know. And then you could use those people, right, to reach out to them and be like, hey, look, I'm really struggling right now. I have marketing experience. However, I don't have SaaS experience and I keep getting blocked from getting accepted. What can I do to get the job, right? Because I don't know the answer to that question because I'm not a marketer, right? I never interviewed for a marketing job and I haven't gone from another industry to SaaS, right? So the contextual answer that I have there, I don't. However, from the concept of like getting it, that's the answer I would give you, because I came from no SaaS experience into sales and I got the job. And a lot of it was reaching out to people who didn't have that experience beforehand and then broke into it due to certain things that they were doing. And essentially they, like you already mentioned it, they mapped out what it was going to be. So one thing I would do is, you said you're already looking at the jobs, and every single job, they always have the responsibilities. So, and you're probably already doing this, but my tip I always tell people is, okay, take your resume, even though it doesn't have SaaS experience, I would take what you've learned so far and map it to the responsibilities. Because most people, when they go in the interview, they don't say, hey, I read the job description, and one of the things you mentioned is this, and this is how I can help. A lot of people don't mention those things. They just come in, they get asked questions. They have their 3 questions they might ask at the end, they might not, and they move on. But if you can map to the responsibilities on the job description and then point it back to how you can directly help, that's also would be big as well. So a couple things right there. But if I was in your shoes, I would either post that on LinkedIn or reach out to people already in my network and ask these questions. So then I can start getting these answers so that I'm equipped and prepared for the interview itself.
Mm-hmm. That's good advice. I've actually been trying to do that, not explicitly, but more just incorporating what I think they're looking for into my responses. But
Yep.
I think it makes sense to maybe call it out more explicitly.
I call it out like, hey, I looked at the job description and there's a couple of responsibilities. I pull out a notepad on the Zoom, like, hey, I have this written down. That would blow them away. They'd be like, you wrote this down? Because again, most people don't do that. Hey, yeah, I wrote down a couple of responsibilities I think I could cover. And I just want to tell you a couple of things of what I can do here directly. Again, most people won't do that. And they'll go like, whoa, okay, Tom came prepared.
That's good advice. Thank you.
Welcome. Any other follow-up questions on what I said? I want to make sure I was clear in everything I was stating to you.
No, I think that's a good place to start.
I had a question kind of related to something that Tom said. It's like two parts. So the first part is both of you, I think Tom and Josh mentioned that you're asking this question at the end. But from the way I understood it, and correct me if I'm wrong, and Morgan, you can kind of jump in. There's a big difference between asking if there's anything preventing them from moving forward, for example, and them saying, no, we're good, versus like, what are some of the things that make me unique for this role, and getting them to sell you. I think like that nuance a lot of times is taken for granted. Am I putting that correctly, Morgan?
You're spot on. So the thing is that like, I asked the question of concerns and hesitations just because no one, unless they're an asshole, is not going to be like, nope, yep, you suck. Like, I'm not going to hire you. Like, no one's going to do that. So most likely they're going to say no. I just want to see how fast they respond to that question. It's not, I know they're probably going to, 99% of the time they're going to say no. I just want to see how fast they respond.
Got it.
I want to see how quick is it, right? And then I'm asking the unique part because I want to see, can they articulate to me how I can be a fit? And if they can't do that, then I'm going to be concerned because then it's like, okay, I might not be a fit here. So I want to see how, at what length are they going to describe how unique I can be to this organization? And they should be able to do it at length if I'm in consideration to get this job.
Perfect. That makes a lot of sense. The other thing that we talked about a bit and we didn't go too deep into it, again, probably could be talked about in a whole nother session, but Tom mentioned it and I hear it all the time. I reached out to 10 people this week. I reached out to 100 people this week, and everyone, we celebrate. How do you feel about volume, and how does that play into all of this? Is that enough? Do we turn it up, turn it down?
I think the best way to go about it is try to find some commonality. And what I mean by that is like, there are a ton of happy hours out right now. There probably is a ton for marketing if you just asked. I'm guaranteed there's some virtual happy hour that marketers go to, right? And there's a ton in sales. So I know that there has to be some in marketing. So I would go look at like, okay, what are different Slack groups I can get into, right? What are different happy hours I can get involved with? That will increase responses because then you're going to get in these groups and they're going to see you. And they're going to be like, oh, yeah, okay. Like that makes a lot of sense. There's a group out there, it's called Rev Genius, and they have sales and marketers in that group, right? And they have like, I think it's like 2,200 people in that group or something like that. So the reason I'm telling you this is that there's different Slack groups you can get involved with, and they have like job postings. They have like marketing section, right? So I would also just get involved with the Slack groups because if you're in the same group together, that response rate is going to 10, 20x, right? Then me just reaching out to someone cold. So I think where you're at, like there is a mix of the volume and there's a mix of obviously the personalization, but I would make sure you can get higher response rates and be more effective with your time by getting into these Slack groups, these happy hours that I know are going on all over the place. I mean, there's a ton. And then ultimately, going after the companies, like 5 to 7 companies, write it down that you really want to go after, that those are the people you're really trying to engage with. So that would also be my take as well.
Love that. You're like creating your touches through these Slack channels that you're in. You don't have to be messaging them on LinkedIn or sending them emails all the time.
You're already in Slack. People are going to respond to you because they're in the Slack. People are more responsive there anyways than other mediums too.
Love it. And we can invite you guys to Rev Genius. They're like a kind of sister org. We have a lot of overlap between the people that are in ours. So it's awesome. I love what they're doing. Any other questions from anyone, or Morgan, kind of closing thoughts? This was super helpful, man. Thank you so much for jumping in. I know you're obviously doing a ton these days.
Yeah.
Kara, Tom, Josh, you guys have any questions for me?
Are you connectable on LinkedIn?
Yes, I am. I'm connectable.
I have one question about the response rate and reaching out that Hatham just touched upon, but I've been hearing from some of my laid off counterparts that LinkedIn fatigue is real, and I've experienced it myself. So do you have any tips for when you're just feeling down on the process and need that recharge?
Recharge, just in general of just like reaching out to people and just going through this whole grind, like what you can be doing?
Yeah, and knowing that this takes time, but still making sure that the quality of each new message and connection is still there.
Yeah. So, one thing I always tell people is like, if you this is just a first and foremost thing. Like, if you're feeling like frustrated about anything, I would always tell people like to go outside and just like take a walk, and just like get away from it, because that energy is going to come off to the other people you're connecting with. So that's my first thing is hey, take a step back, walk around, you feel good about it. Right. But also what I would do as well is the reason I'm recommending the different touch points, like videos, video messages. I mean, you can also do GIFs and GIFs on LinkedIn too, is that gets you away from fatigue. So the reason we get fatigue on certain things is it becomes monotonous. We do them over and over and over again, and we're like, all right, like I'm getting bored. I'm getting tired of this. So the reason I'm telling you all to do these different things is obviously they're going to stand out and people are going to respond to them because it breaks through the noise. However, it breaks through your own pattern and it makes things exciting and engaging for you. Like I'm doing it because it's fun for me. It's going to be fun for them too, but it's also fun for me. So now I'm not bored, and now I'm not like, oh, I'm getting exhausted. I'm getting tired. Right. And another thing that I would recommend is just writing down what you want to accomplish per day with LinkedIn. Because when we accomplish tasks or we complete a goal, like that also gets us more excited to go do more things. So maybe Carrot's like, hey, I'm going to reach out to 5 people on LinkedIn today, and I'm going to do 5 videos, and I'm going to research 5 companies I really want to go work for. Right. And so when you do that check mark on things, it has a sense of accomplishment with it, which is why I do a lot of journaling and gratefulness in the morning, because I want to be able to see, okay, like what am I doing today? What am I grateful for? And it gets you in a different perspective in terms of mindset. So that's how you get away from the LinkedIn fatigue, is not doing the same things over and over again, like trying out different things and doing new things. So it's exciting for you and you don't feel like you're overwhelmed.
Thank you.
I love it. And use a lot of emojis. No, but we want to see you guys succeed. So we'll follow up. I'll chase you down, make sure that we're actually taking actions after these calls, because we don't want to just have them for the sake of having them. We're really focused on getting some like very specific outcomes for you guys. So look out for my messages. Look out for the videos that are coming. And again, thank you so much, Morgan, for jumping in, and thank you all you guys for coming in here with us.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Hopefully you guys found this helpful. And if you guys have any questions, you can definitely hit me up on LinkedIn.
Sounds good. Thank
Love
you.
it. Have a great day, guys.
All right. See you guys.
Thanks. Take care.